To my audience, I'm Laura Hart. I am the CEO and founder of RoboFun. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Stephen Edwards, a computer scientist who teaches at Columbia University. How are you, Stephen?
Hey, doing well.
Good.
Get to be back in my office here for a while. This is everybody asks, is this a real background? And the answer is, why, yes, it is.
Yeah, good point. Good point. For those of you joining us who may not have been in what we call my heart to hearts, we meet every week, and I find people that I am absolutely fascinated to talk with and who help me grow as a human being, help me think about learning, education, technology, our world in general. And Stephen and I love talking to each other and often have these wonderful riffs about what's right and what's wrong in education and other areas. Before we get started, I want to say a few things about RoboFun for those of you who may be joining us for the first time. RoboFun is 24 years old, and we are located at 102nd and Broadway, where we offer clubs, classes, camps, private lessons, and birthday parties, any kind of party, really. I'm very proud of our staff. We've gotten through the pandemic. Numbers are growing as everything's coming back to some sort of normal. If you would like to be on our mailing list, I send out a blog twice a week at RoboFun. Go to robofun.org, and there's a box right in the front to sign up. This is a live conversation, and the chat is really fun. So if you're hearing us and you want to add comments or questions, we both have a lot of opinions, a lot of knowledge about different areas, and we'd love to have you. My last pitch for RoboFun is starting tomorrow is our spring break. So if you're like, oh my goodness, I have my kid more than I want to have him at home or her, and I'd like him or her to do something productive with this time. We have mornings, afternoons, or full days, but it's really flexible. So you can sign up just for the morning or just the afternoon or the full day or the full week if you want. And we run programs for 3-year-olds through 13-year-olds in building. For the little ones, we call it little coders and little engineers. And then we have robotics, junior robotics, coding, and also the big seller right now is Minecraft. So we do Minecraft with circuitry. So yes, they're having a really fun time with Minecraft, but we're teaching all sorts of concepts of circuitry and beginning again to actually build things with circuits, which we sort of stopped in the middle of the pandemic. So that's robofun.org. And my last comment before we get started with Stephen, that I just finished a social media marketing meeting and everyone's like, Laura, you have to push the sharing. And I was like, okay. So I believe on your screen, you have something in the bottom right and you can share this conversation if you find it interesting or useful. It really does help. I sound like Ira Glass on This American Life, but if you tell your friends about us, it really helps us. So thank you in advance for that. Now to the meat of our conversation. Stephen's kids survived RoboFun, and we met because he dropped them off and kept kind of wandering over. And I was like, this person, I should start learning more. And, only to discover he was a computer science professor at Columbia. And we have a lot of similar ideas. And so we're going to start today by talking about Python. We are in the process of writing a Python curriculum. Actually, we're teaching it right now. In fact, we have one child tomorrow afternoon for 3 hours. So those of you listening, if you have a child, I believe that runs from 10 to 13-year-olds, might be 9 to 13-year-olds. And I wanted to pick Stephen's brain because I have mixed feelings about teaching it. I'm involved in writing the curriculum and I'm making it extremely child-centered, accessible for kids. But it's definitely a different environment than some of the other programming environments that I've taught kids, such as Logo, which is no longer used that much, or Scratch. And I was just curious to ask Stephen, why do you think Python is a great thing for middle school, or do you think Python is a good thing for middle schoolers to learn?
Well, I think it's a pretty wonderful language and has a pretty low barrier to entry for a sort of a text-based language. So there's no question in my mind that Scratch is even more fun for younger kids because it was very, very specifically designed to work for that and succeeds beautifully in that respect.
Right.
But what I find about Scratch is sort of the difficulty curve starts off very low, and then as soon as you want to do anything really complicated, it gets insanely difficult, much more so than using a textual language.
Interesting. It's sort of not precise enough, would you say, or?
Well, no, it gives you it makes the easy things really, really convenient, and then just sort of, I'm sorry, there's nothing really more advanced than this. And so you've got to sort of work around the limitations of language to get anything more fancy, right? I remember looking at somebody had implemented Pac-Man or something like that in Scratch, pretty sophisticated bit of game. They had to do something like every single dot they had to create a new little script for it and so forth. It's like, are you kidding me?
Right.
So it's things like that that's going on. Python, of course, is has the inscrutable syntax that we all know and love in programming languages, all kinds of bizarre behaviors, all these other things that programmers are accustomed to. Young kids probably aren't.
Right.
But it's still a lot more user friendly than JavaScript or Lord help us C or Java or something like that and so forth. The other great thing is it's really turning into the language for non-computer scientists in the sciences. So you can find we just had a faculty retreat where we were talking sort of about the state of our department at Columbia and so forth, and we realized we're just a machine learning factory at the moment. Every student who comes here, I want to do AI, machine learning, or whatever. And I got email from a student saying something like, well, I like this machine learning course, but I don't like all the math. And I think what they were really hoping was that all they had to do was code in Python to do this machine learning stuff, because many of the interesting machine learning libraries have a Python interface.
Right.
And so this is a mind-blowing thing, and I'm not sure I would recommend this for 13-year-olds per se, but it might actually be possible.
What the feedback we're getting from the kids is they like it, and being somebody who's taught for many years, we've really scaffolded the curriculum and we've done many things to make it so that they see the connection to other languages like Scratch, but they also see the connections to their life. One of the things that we had fun researching, and I'm curious, I insisted that the first program say hello world, because there's such a history, because part of my whole thing in teaching is I don't want them to learn these pieces. I want them to learn pieces that relate to a larger thing. So we researched a little bit about hello world, which my understanding, can you talk to us a little bit about your understanding of how hello world evolved as often the first code that people use when they learn how to program?
Yeah. Well, let's see. So I don't know the exact history of it, and I'm sure it's one of these things that would be, hotly debated. Things like, where did the word bug come from when you were describing computer thing? And there's a great story that's not the origin, but it's a great story anyway. And it's sort of the same thing with Hello World. But yeah, it's I routinely use it in my classes where I explain what is the simplest thing you could possibly write that indicates that you're able to do anything at all.
That you're, right. We're really talking about showing that your program works.
Well, showing that you can write any program at all.
Okay.
That you understand the syntax and the semantics of the language well enough, or you've got a new system that you're building and you want to have it announce that it actually exists on the planet and so forth. It's kind of like a baby crying or something like that. It's just that you're sending essentially one bit of information, which is I'm here, something worked.
Right.
And we take it for granted because, I don't know, something like Scratch or whatever, it's straightforward. You click three things and you have a working program. It's wonderful. By contrast, something like an Arduino, one of these little development boards or something like that, the effort it used to take to get to the point where that would blink a light, which is sort of the hello world of that world,
Yep.
is it used to be kind of insane. It's gotten a lot better. A lot of people have put a lot of effort into sort of smoothing it along. But yeah, no, that's what you need. It's when confronted with a new programming environment, what's the simplest thing you could possibly write to indicate that you managed to write a program?
Right. Right.
There's a long.
A couple of the comments from our kids are they're really proud that they're doing the language their dad might be doing or their mom might be doing.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember when I first started teaching my daughter a little bit of Python. Oh my God, the ego boost that it got her.
Yes.
The being able to brag to her friends, oh, I'm not using Scratch anymore. I'm using a real language and so forth.
Right. Yep.
It's a positive thing.
So I want to move on to, you've been at Columbia quite a while now. I don't even know, like 20 years?
Yeah, it's been over 20 years now. It's kind of scary.
So what do you see as characteristics of successful learners? What do you see in your students? I see, I work with little kids and I pretty quickly can size up, this child may have some issues with AD and ADHD. This child is hearing everything deeply and gonna fly with it, and I'm wondering, what do you see in your kids and in your successful?
Yeah, and so we can connect this to all the things we were just talking about. In fact,
yes,
it's actually really simple. They have to like it.
Yep.
It's really as simple as that. I was mentioning, so I really wish I'd saved this article. I need to go back and find it. So the Freakonomics guy wrote an article years ago, appeared in some paper or something like that, asking the question, why is Michael Jordan good at basketball? Mm-hmm. And points out, okay, yeah, the guy's tall, has a pretty good build and so forth, but mostly he just loves it. And practices and practices and practices and picks this stuff up. Yep. And the more you practice, the better you get at it and all the rest of it. Yep. And so the whole trick is, how do you engineer and then focus this enthusiasm? And this is really tricky. Now, we as educators can do this, or can help with this to a great extent by giving the students tasks where they get this little high of making it print out hello world, or making it, build this or something like that. Right. And my feeling is, though, as an educator, we're somewhat limited in what we can do, right? We could, lead a horse to water and all the rest of that. But engineering that enthusiasm is really, really difficult. And, I look at my own two kids and, yes, I'm both pretty sure they're mine, but they're sort of night and day different about what they're enthusiastic about and what flips their switches and so forth. So periodically I've got students coming to me saying, oh, I'd like to do an independent project with you or work on something. And I ask them the most difficult question they've ever heard. What do you like doing? What are you good at? They usually match up pretty well. Mm-hmm. And the enthusiastic ones are the ones who would probably learn this stuff anyway, even if we didn't require them to.
Right.
And we sort of guide them. Whereas the other ones sort of, I got to be forced to learn this. Whereas the good ones are, this is frickin' wonderful. Let's see if I can get some more of this.
Right.
Somehow.
Right.
And so, you do this to an extent with young children, of course. On the other hand, if they come in the door, they probably know what Legos are. They probably know what Minecraft is. They probably love that already. And so it's pretty easy to sort of, pile that on top.
Right. I would say at RoboFun, we get a couple of different buckets of kids. We get some who have absolutely no idea, and their parents very much feel that children need these skills. And, it's our job and I feel as though we really work hard and do it well to make them really love it, and to make, that loving what you're doing is what's going to make you do it well, and caring about it. I remember in the years that I was a classroom teacher, I would have the kids working on projects, and then we'd come to the table and talk about it. And one little boy came and said, I can't stop. I can't have a class meeting right now. I'm too busy with my project. And I said, okay, that's success.
Yep. You win. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly it. And I look back on my own experiences, and there's plenty of stuff I was forced to do that I have just had no interest in, and still have no interest in.
Yep.
And it reminds me. So the reason I'm sort of doing what I'm doing, and where I'm doing it, and how I'm doing it, and so forth, I can trace back to a couple of times in my undergraduate and graduate career where I would work more on the homework for a particular class so I could avoid doing homework for these other classes. When you get to that point, take that as a sign, take that as a, yes, this is really what I should be doing, and sure enough, it worked out. I work on compilers. I took a compilers class. Like the first 2 weeks of that, I went and grabbed the recommended textbook, read through it, wrote my own little thing based on, not an assignment or anything like that. It's just, geez, this is cool. We can use this.
Right.
And that's pretty unusual. That did not happen for me, for example, in English class, I must admit. But it's a different thing.
I think good teachers and good parents can work around it. Like maybe you could write about compilers, which would help you become a better writer, and you're writing about something you love.
Oh yeah, no, and it's caught up over the years. I've gotten a little bit better marginally.
I'm not implying that, yeah.
Right. No, I understand, but I compare this with I have a friend over in the journalism school who loves English writing and so forth, as you would expect in a position like that.
Yeah.
And tells of stories of how he and his parents would get called into the school because they were accusing him of plagiarism, because they thought a 12-year-old couldn't possibly write this well. Well, in fact, he could, because he'd been doing it all his life and so forth. And that's kind of what you need to do. But it's challenging stuff. And so part of the trick, and you can get away with it, especially with young kids and so forth, is there are some things that are a lot more fun and other things that are just not very fun. Right. And you can communicate the same thing with each of them, but there's some ways that, this is really a lot more interesting, and you can sort of trick them into doing stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like adding a grated zucchini into pancakes and not quite telling your children that there's a little vegetable in there or something like that.
Yeah, or something like that. Or it can almost work.
Right.
So I'm curious though, what other kinds of buckets? So you've got the students who.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Okay, so we have the students whose parents, I sort of slightly cynically say want them to get into Harvard.
Right.
But I'm, but the other side of that, in their defense, is they really want them exposed. They want them to see a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great, because some of those kids come not knowing what they like, and especially girls, which we sadly have fewer girls than boys, become phenomenal coders, just phenomenal. And they're like, yeah, I like this. And of course, I think it helps that we have a lot of women teachers as well. And we have a lot of really good teachers, that's
great. I'll interrupt you for a second, because I'm incredibly proud of this. I didn't have too much to do with it. We are at 50-50 male-female at Columbia in computer science. It's
in
insane.
terms of teachers or students?
Students.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
The teachers are still wildly unbalanced.
Do you know why or how?
So it's a complicated thing, and there's a lot of things going on, and quite frankly, I don't understand all the moving pieces or exactly why it's brought. There's a bunch of stuff that's going on. One of it is just simply the it's a multiplicative thing, right? If women see themselves and the other students, say, oh yeah, maybe I can actually go there. So once you get there, it's easy to maintain. But how did you bootstrap it? I'm not sure. Columbia is interesting. So it has Barnard, which is the Radcliffe of Columbia, that is essentially all women and so forth. And for years, we would have 2, maybe 3 per year come over and do it. Now we're up to 50 or 60. And so something changed. I'm not quite sure what. Maybe the advising changed, or people started using Facebook, or whatever it is. Anyway, it's wonderful. So
that's fantastic.
It's just a great thing.
That's fantastic. Okay, so back to the buckets.
Yeah.
I want exposure is one. Another is, and I say it in complete understanding as a single mom, I need really good things for my kid, and you guys are near us, and I know you take care of children well. And
sure.
I think we have this little secret that no one says, which a heck of a lot of supplemental education can be glorified childcare. And if you're in the right place, and hopefully at RoboFun, I believe we do this really well.
I think that's completely incorrect. I don't think it applies to just supplemental education.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah.
I think don't get me started on that. But anyway, I certainly understand that.
Right.
And, as a parent, I certainly get it.
Sure. And the third bucket is kids who just like came out of the womb holding a piece of Lego practically, or just just love this kind of thing. And I would also add that we get a lot of smart, but quirky kids who the socializing part is really, really hard for them. And I'm pretty experienced with this. When I was a teenager, I actually had a little boy, Jonathan, who I was his shadow, who was an autistic boy. And we work very hard at the social parts of things, so that often for those children who may have social challenges, the harder times are snack and lunch than class. And my staff are really aware of this, and we really scaffold those times so that those kids can participate.
Sounds very, very familiar. Looking at my own children, my students, and myself growing up, I have this model of there are all these things you can be doing. You could be socializing, you can be working with a computer, you can be writing, you can be reading, or what have you. And you'll probably be forced to do all of them in one form or another. But some of them will come easier than others, and you will probably gravitate toward those. And that's certainly true. I like to joke to my students, I got into engineering specifically to avoid people. I'm doing this in front of an audience of 100, and they all laugh.
Yeah.
But there's truth in it.
Right.
And so, and I can believe it. There's a big difference in the kind of thinking and emotional stability and so forth between putting Lego blocks together and figuring out what fits and what doesn't and so forth, and figuring out why the kid next to you is hitting him with your carrot at snack time. That's black and white.
Right. And how do you manage that moment? And in life, managing both are equally important in many ways. And
and requiring very different skills and very different, and they're going to give different people sort of different feedback and rewards and painful and so forth. And so, it's a tricky thing. And this is what it's so challenging is I don't know how to shift, this is difficult. You're going to have a hard time learning this. Oh, this seems to work better with your mindset or what have you. That's the tricky stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we kind of touched on this earlier. I have this phrase that I think of called circles of strengths. So that if you're passionate about compilers, maybe to get, implying that communication might have not been the thing you did great at 8, maybe you can communicate what you know about compilers as a way to get you into communication.
versus let's talk about communication. That's kind of dry and boring. But let's talk about something you're passionate about. And can you share 3 things about compilers with the rest of the class who may know nothing? I mean, we have kids.
Yeah.
I remember one boy knew so much about history. It just blew us all away. So tell us a little bit about history, in snack. So
yeah. Oh yeah, and that's absolutely that's a wonderful thing, and I can point to something like that in my own life. Like everybody else, I suffered through history courses in high school, and they were just dead boring. Oh, this group warred on that group. This group had this war on that. And this king came to power and so forth. Just incredibly boring. But at some point, I discovered, wait, technology has history too.
Right. Yeah.
And, I kind of like technology history.
Right.
And when you start looking at it very, very broadly, to actually understand what's going on in technology, you actually sort of begin to have to understand what's going on in the society, and who's warring with whom, and so forth. So it's all connected.
Yep. So I want to ask a rather obvious question, or that maybe other people who are watching are thinking, what are we looking at behind you? Or maybe you could just grab one thing and tell us a little bit about it.
Oh yeah, that's a joy. Let's see, what's the most interesting object here?
So it looks like some old computers.
It is definitely old computers, which is my whole, which is mostly my office. There are also plenty of old books and 1 or 2 old professors in here. I blame this all actually on Marie Kondo, right? Who says, if it doesn't spark joy, get rid of it. It all sparks joy. One of the things I learned a long time ago is that if I wanted to learn something, having it in my hand, having it in my possession, really greatly accelerates it. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an idea. I'm going to get into a lot of trouble by saying this. So these are all dumpster dive acquisitions, and I found actually about 15 of these things. What is it? And if you're like me, you've got to know. So it was a touchscreen interface to some sort of enterprise level printing system. The idea is you'd put one of these next to every laser printer, and if you wanted to print something, you'd have to go in and enter a password and so forth, and it would charge it to your account and then connect it up and all the rest of that. And obviously, I don't care at all about printing. I actually haven't printed out things in months or years now at this point. But it's a little computer, and it's got network stuff on it and serial port stuff on it. And I started, opened it up and looked at the chips and figured out what it was and found the documentation on it. Looked in, you can reflash the firmware to change this. It's running a little Linux system. Oh, I know about this. It's not locked down. You can actually log in. You connect up this thing, and you get a terminal port on it, and so forth. You get the idea.
Yep, it's DIY.
It's DIY. It's a lot more fun to learn when I'm holding it like this than it is from a book.
Right.
Or rather, what happens is once I have one of these things, then I'm tempted to search on Google and find the details and so forth. Now, there's all kinds of stuff, but what would I look up? Well, it's the stuff that I actually have, and then start coming up with devious things to do to these things. And the problem is, I have 2 racks just like this, full of stuff like this. Every one of them, I can tell you a story of that magnitude. That it's this, and I love it. It teaches me things.
Okay, so we're getting to the end of our time, but there's 2 things I want to. Okay, so Steve, we're going to do every other month or something because we have such a good.
Yeah, I think as long as the people keep showing up, we ought to keep doing that.
Okay, but the 2 comments I want to make is that you love what you do, and that's what we want to help children do: is find things they love. And I'm a real proponent of try things out. try out all sorts of things with your kids. And let them see you loving things. I think that that's also incredibly important, that kids know when you're passionate about something.
Oh, absolutely. And it's frustrating. So this is actually what drew my wife and I together. We have radically different backgrounds, but we both have known exactly what we wanted it to be and what we will be since about age 3.
Wow.
And so your comment about, being born with having Legos in your hand as you come out of the womb, that was pretty close to me. It was a little bit more electrical, but you get the basic idea.
Yep.
With her, it was drawing.
Uh-huh.
And the sad thing is I think it actually intimidates our daughter anyway, who does not have that gift of knowing exactly what she wants just yet.
Right. It's a real gift. It's really, really a gift.
It's a joy, and I'm guessing somebody who's been teaching kids Legos and robots and so forth for 20 years also has a similar level of passion in her life. But
I do.
Yes. This is the trick. It's how do you get to that point, and how do you figure out what that is?
Right. And you figure it out by messing around with different things.
You try it until you get that feeling like, my God, I got to get more of this.
Yes, exactly. So my last comment is your friend or a colleague or someone, Paul Smith, tell us about your dumpster diving. So is this a regular thing that you do?
Oh yeah, this is like Christmas every day. So I go by I'm going to get into all kinds of trouble for this. I go by the Columbia e-waste and pull out old computers, and most of the time it's boring. But it's like a slot machine, right? Every once in a while, once or twice a week, I hit a gold mine, and it goes on and on. So I found this the other day, which, let's see, can you read this? Yeah, do not disturb earthquake monitoring equipment, it says.
Okay.
It had a radio in it. It had a radio for receiving time data from a satellite.
Wow.
Now, this was not GPS satellites. This predates it, and all the rest of it. And again, it's just, I wouldn't have even occurred to me to look for such a thing. Right. But pretty quickly, I had gone in and read the description of the protocol that the satellites were using, the history of the satellites. How they build the receiver, details about it's using an active antenna and how they shift things so you can use cheap coax instead of so forth and so on. And something like this happens once a week.
That's very cool. I think you might have to. I might have to drag you into RoboFun over the summer and share some of this with our kids in camp.
We should. Something that I'm planning to do actually is grab a bunch of old computers, go to a high school, and have a let's tear it apart day.
Okay.
And some people get it, some won't. Some people will find it boring. Others will just say, the light will shine down on them, and they'll say, "My God, this is great."
You might have an assistant in me. I might go with you.
Yeah. There we go.
So we're going to wrap things up. I want to remind everyone, Dr. Stephen Edwards teaches computer science at Columbia. We're really, really lucky to have you here. Thank you.
My pleasure, Laura. It's always great fun. Yep, we'll have to do this again in another month or two.
Absolutely. And I want to end with a few housekeeping things. RoboFun is located on the Upper West Side at 102nd and Broadway. And we have classes, clubs, camps, private lessons, and birthday parties for kids there. But if you're watching this and like, I can't bring my kid to 102nd and Broadway, we run over 100 programs in schools throughout the 5 boroughs. In fact, in a few minutes, because of the Great Resignation, I'm on my way to Staten Island, and it's become my favorite afternoon of the week. I work with 5 to 7-year-olds for 2 hours every Thursday afternoon.
Oh, I didn't know you'd started doing that. That's wonderful.
My staff had to kind of drag me. I mean, basically, it came down to we don't have a person right now. Anybody listening who And I was like, well, I don't think I can do it. And they're like, Laura, you have to do it. And you know what? It's really great being back in the classroom. It really is. I can't wait to see little Emily, all of my
Sure.
kids. So if you're finding this exciting and of interest, please share it. Please tell people about our talks. Every week we have a talk. Next week is with a woman who is teaching something called Turtle Stitch in high school, teaching programming through sewing. Should be really interesting. And every week I have somebody different, and we post it usually Monday, Tuesday of the week. And I want to thank you all. Go to robofun.org and you can sign up, and you'll get informed of what's going on. And everybody, at least in New York City, it's a gorgeous day today. Enjoy the weather. And Steve, we will be in touch.
Absolutely.
All right.
Very good.
Bye-bye.